Get away from my horse before you get somebody hurt. The woman's voice cracked across the equestrian arena like a whip, sharp enough to silence a crowd of hundreds. Every head turned toward the center ring where Thunder, a jet-black stallion worth more than most homes in the county, paced in restless circles beneath the bright afternoon sun. Trainers had tried. Experts had tried. Men with championship trophies and television contracts had tried. Yet the powerful horse trusted no one. Not anymore. Madison Sterling stood near the fence line, her tailored riding jacket spotless despite the dust swirling around her boots. As CEO of Sterling Equine Holdings, she was used to being obeyed. Used to winning. Used to watching people step aside when she entered a room. But Thunder refused to care about wealth, status, or reputation. The stallion tossed his head, snorting sharply as spectators shifted uneasily in their seats. Across the arena, Trevor Kane adjusted his expensive sunglasses and shook his head. "I told you," he said. "That horse isn't ready." Madison crossed her arms. "He's been through 6 trainers in 8 months. Someone needs to figure him out." "Not today," Trevor replied. "Nobody's getting near him." A murmur spread through the crowd. The annual Montana Heritage Horse Showcase had drawn ranchers, investors, and horse lovers from 3 states. People had come expecting elegance and competition. Instead, they were watching a very public failure. Then something unexpected happened. Near the back of the gathering, a little girl no older than 9 stepped closer to the fence. Her blonde ponytail danced in the breeze as she stared quietly at Thunder. Beside her stood a man in worn jeans and a faded work shirt. Nothing about him attracted attention. No expensive watch. No polished boots. No signs of importance. Just a tired single dad holding a paper cup of lemonade while keeping one eye on his daughter. "Daddy," the girl whispered. "That horse isn't angry." The man studied the stallion for several seconds. His expression never changed. "No," he said softly. "He isn't." The girl looked up. "He's scared, isn't he?" The man nodded once. Before he could say another word, Thunder jerked backward and the crowd gasped. Madison immediately stepped forward. Trevor barked instructions. Arena staff rushed toward the rails. The atmosphere tightened like a stretched wire. Then the man in the faded shirt began walking toward the ring. Several people laughed. Others exchanged confused looks. Madison noticed him instantly. "Sir," she called. "Stay back." He kept walking. Calm. Unhurried. The way someone approaches a frightened animal instead of a dangerous one. Trevor scoffed loudly. "Great. Now we've got a cowboy from the parking lot." More laughter followed. The little girl gripped the fence and watched her father with complete confidence. Madison's eyes narrowed. "I said get away from my horse." The man finally stopped and looked toward her. His voice was quiet, almost lost beneath the wind sweeping across the arena. "Ma'am," he said, "I don't think Thunder belongs to anybody right now." The crowd chuckled again. Madison did not. Because for the first time all afternoon, the wild stallion had stopped pacing. And for reasons nobody could explain, his eyes were locked on the poor single dad standing 30 feet away. Before the story takes a turn, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, do you think she should trust him? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's continue. Thunder did not move. The massive stallion remained perfectly still, his ears forward, his attention fixed on Caleb Dawson as though the noise of the arena had suddenly disappeared. Around them, hundreds of spectators shifted uneasily in their seats. The Montana sun hung low above the fairgrounds, casting long golden shadows across the dust-covered ring. Madison Sterling felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. It was not fear. It was uncertainty. She was accustomed to reading people, negotiating billion-dollar acquisitions, and making decisions that affected entire industries. Yet the quiet man standing near her horse made no sense to her at all. Caleb, meanwhile, showed no interest in the crowd. He barely seemed aware of them. His focus remained on Thunder. Emma watched from behind the fence, her small hands wrapped around the wooden rail. She knew that look on her father's face. It was the same look he wore when repairing a broken fence after a storm or helping an injured animal at their small ranch outside town. Calm. Patient. Unhurried. The kind of calm that came from experience rather than confidence. Few people knew much about Caleb Dawson. Most saw a hard-working father driving an aging pickup truck through town each morning before sunrise. They saw a man who fixed fences, repaired barns, and accepted whatever work came his way. They saw worn boots, rough hands, and a life that seemed ordinary. What they did not see were the sacrifices hidden behind those quiet eyes. 7 years earlier, everything had changed. After losing his wife, Caleb had walked away from a career he never discussed. He sold nearly everything he owned and moved to a modest ranch less than 30 miles from town. There he devoted himself to raising Emma. While others chased promotions and recognition, Caleb learned how to braid a little girl's hair before school, attend every parent meeting, and stretch a dollar farther than he ever thought possible. The world called him poor. Emma called him rich. Rich in time. Rich in kindness. Rich in the steady presence that never failed her. Back inside the arena, Trevor Kane folded his arms. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "The horse is only standing there because he is confused." Several people nodded. Others were no longer sure. Thunder lowered his head slightly. A murmur spread through the crowd. Madison noticed it immediately. Over the past 8 months, she had spent thousands of hours around the Stallion. She had studied his behavior. Hired specialists. Consulted veterinarians. Read reports. Yet she had never seen him look this relaxed. Not once. Caleb finally took a single step forward. Thunder remained still. Another step. Still no reaction. The arena grew quiet enough to hear the distant creak of a flagpole swaying in the afternoon breeze. Even the announcer stopped speaking. Madison watched carefully. Something was happening. Something none of her experts had predicted. Then Emma smiled softly behind the fence. Because she had already figured out what the adults had missed. Her father was not trying to control Thunder. He was trying to understand him. And sometimes understanding was far more powerful than control. Madison Sterling had spent most of her life proving people wrong. At 34, she controlled one of the largest equine companies in North America, managed ranches across 6 states, and sat at conference tables where billion-dollar decisions were made before lunch. Reporters called her fearless. Investors called her brilliant. Competitors called her relentless. The truth was simpler. Madison hated losing. That was why Thunder mattered so much. 8 months earlier, she had purchased the Stallion from a renowned breeding operation in Wyoming. The horse possessed an extraordinary bloodline, remarkable intelligence, and athletic potential that experts claimed appeared once in a generation. On paper, Thunder was the perfect symbol of everything Madison admired: strength, excellence, and prestige. Yet from the moment he arrived, nothing went according to plan. Trainer after trainer offered solutions. One recommended stricter routines. Another suggested specialized conditioning. A third promised results within 30 days. None succeeded. Thunder resisted every attempt to earn his trust. The more people pushed, the more distant he became. Madison refused to accept defeat. She increased the budget. Hired consultants. Brought in behavioral specialists from 3 different states. Each left with impressive invoices and disappointing results. Eventually she turned to Trevor Kane, a celebrity horse trainer whose face appeared regularly in magazines and television interviews. Trevor promised confidence. Trevor promised answers. Trevor promised success. Months later, Thunder remained exactly where he had started. Unreachable. Back in the arena, Trevor cleared his throat and forced a smile. A horse can stand still for many reasons, he announced loudly. People are reading too much into this. Several spectators nodded, but far fewer than before. Their attention remained fixed on Caleb. The quiet rancher had not touched the horse. Had not raised his voice. Had not demonstrated anything dramatic. Yet somehow the atmosphere around Thunder felt different. Madison noticed it too. She hated admitting it. Even to herself. Caleb took another slow step. Dust drifted across the arena floor. The late afternoon sunlight painted the stallion's black coat with streaks of bronze and gold. Thunder lowered his head slightly farther. A small movement. Easy to miss. Impossible to ignore. Daddy was right, Emma whispered from the fence. The woman standing beside her glanced down. About what? Emma smiled. The horse is listening. The woman looked back toward the ring. He has not even said anything. Emma's smile widened. Sometimes my dad does not need words. Those simple words lingered in the air. Madison folded her arms tighter. For reasons she could not explain, she suddenly wanted to know more about the man standing before her. Not his name. Not his occupation. Something deeper. Something hidden. Because people did not carry themselves the way Caleb Dawson did without a story. They did not remain that calm under public scrutiny without experience. And they certainly did not earn the attention of a horse like Thunder in less than 10 minutes. As the crowd watched in growing silence, Madison felt the first crack appear in a belief she had carried for years. Money could buy expertise. It could buy resources. It could buy influence. But standing in front of her was a man who possessed something none of those things could purchase. And for the first time since Thunder arrived, Madison Sterling was no longer the person most in control of the situation. The silence inside the arena deepened with every passing second. People who had arrived expecting entertainment now found themselves watching something they could not explain. Caleb stood quietly near the center of the ring while Thunder remained focused on him alone. The stallion's breathing appeared steadier now. His posture looked softer. Not submissive. Not defeated. Simply calmer. Caleb noticed details others overlooked. The slight tension near the horse's eyes. The occasional flick of his ears. The way his attention shifted whenever a loudspeaker crackled overhead. These were not signs of aggression. They were signs of anxiety. Signs of an animal carrying stress nobody had bothered to understand. Caleb slowly extended an empty hand. Not close enough to touch. Only close enough to offer trust. Thunder watched carefully. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Madison found herself taking an unconscious step forward. She wanted answers. More than that, she wanted control of a situation slipping beyond her understanding. "What exactly are you doing?" she called. Caleb did not take his eyes off the horse. "Listening." Trevor laughed loudly. "Listening? It is a horse." A few people joined the laughter, but the sound faded quickly. Nobody seemed completely convinced anymore. Caleb finally glanced toward Madison. His expression remained calm. Most people spend their time trying to make an animal obey. Very few spend time figuring out why it is afraid. Madison frowned. Thunder is not afraid. Caleb looked back at the stallion. Then why does he relax every time people stop crowding him? The question lingered in the warm afternoon air. Madison opened her mouth to answer but stopped. She had no answer. Deep down, she realized she had never considered that possibility. For months everyone had treated Thunder like a problem to solve. An obstacle to overcome. A challenge to conquer. Nobody had asked what the horse might be experiencing. Near the fence, Emma watched proudly. She remembered another frightened animal from years earlier. A neglected rescue pony nobody wanted. While others called it stubborn, her father spent days sitting quietly outside its stall. No ropes. No pressure. No demands. By the end of the week the pony followed him everywhere. Daddy always says trust grows slower than fear, she whispered to herself. Meanwhile Madison studied Caleb more closely. His clothes were simple. His boots showed years of wear. Yet there was an unmistakable confidence beneath his humility. Not the confidence of someone trying to impress others. The confidence of someone who no longer needed approval. That realization unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Thunder lowered his head another inch. The movement was subtle, but dozens of people noticed. A ripple of astonishment moved through the crowd. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Madison felt her heartbeat quicken. Then something happened that no trainer had accomplished in 8 months. Thunder took a single slow step toward Caleb. The arena fell completely silent. And for the first time since purchasing the Stallion, Madison Sterling wondered whether the poorest man in the arena might also be the wisest. The spell that had settled over the arena did not last. Trevor Kane stepped forward with a sharp smile and a louder voice, eager to reclaim the attention that had drifted away from him. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us not get carried away," he announced. A horse taking a few steps does not make someone an expert. A few nervous laughs echoed through the crowd. Madison remained silent, but Trevor continued. "Anybody can stand there and look mysterious. The real work is done by professionals." His gaze landed directly on Caleb. "Tell me, what exactly are your qualifications?" Caleb shrugged slightly. "I work on a ranch." Trevor chuckled. "That explains it." More laughter followed. Not cruel from everyone, but enough. Enough for Emma to hear it. Enough for her small smile to fade. She tightened her grip on the fence and looked down at the dusty ground beneath her boots. Caleb noticed immediately. He always noticed. Yet he showed no anger. No embarrassment. Only the same quiet composure that had carried him through years of hardship. Trevor spread his hands dramatically. "This event attracts some of the finest horse specialists in the country. We are talking about people with certifications, awards, and decades of documented success. Not a man who wanders in from the parking lot." Several spectators shifted uncomfortably. The comment felt unnecessary. Madison knew it too. Yet part of her remained defensive. Part of her resisted the idea that someone so ordinary could understand what her highly paid experts had missed. "Perhaps Mr. Dawson should leave the training to professionals," Trevor added. It was the first time anyone had spoken Caleb's name. Madison blinked. She had not even realized Trevor had learned it. Caleb glanced toward Emma. His daughter tried to smile back, but disappointment lingered in her eyes. The sight touched something deep inside him. Not because people were mocking him. He had endured far worse. What hurt was watching Emma learn how quickly the world judged people by appearances. The late afternoon breeze swept across the arena. Dust danced through shafts of golden sunlight. Thunder shifted his weight and turned his attention away from Trevor entirely. The stallion's eyes returned to Caleb. The contrast did not go unnoticed. Trevor kept talking. Thunder kept listening to someone else. Madison watched both men carefully. One demanded attention. The other never asked for it. One filled the air with explanations. The other remained comfortable in silence. The difference unsettled her. Then Emma lifted her head. "My dad is kind to animals," she said softly. The words were not loud. Yet in the growing quiet, many people heard them. Trevor smiled politely. That is nice, sweetheart. The dismissive tone landed harder than any insult. Emma looked down again. Caleb finally spoke. His voice remained calm. You do not have to convince anyone who you are when your character already does it for you. The crowd fell silent. Trevor's smile faded. Madison felt something shift inside her. Because while everyone had been busy measuring credentials, wealth, and status, the horse had chosen whom he trusted. And that choice was beginning to expose truths that no resume ever could. For a moment it seemed as though the afternoon might end in quiet reflection. Then the unexpected happened. A burst of feedback crackled from the arena sound system overhead. The sharp noise echoed across the fairgrounds and several people covered their ears. Thunder immediately lifted his head. The stallion's muscles tightened. His attention shifted away from Caleb and toward the source of the disturbance. Arena staff rushed to adjust equipment near the announcer's booth. Spectators began turning in different directions, creating movement all around the ring. What had been calm suddenly felt chaotic. Madison's stomach tightened. She had seen situations like this before. Thunder struggled whenever too many things happened at once. Everybody stay calm. She called. Her voice remained composed, but concern crept into her expression. Trevor stepped forward quickly. Give him space, he shouted. Unfortunately, the louder people became, the more unsettled the atmosphere felt. Caleb remained exactly where he was. Still. Grounded. Focused. His eyes never left Thunder. While everyone else reacted to the situation, Caleb watched the horse. Watched his breathing. Watched his ears. Watched the uncertainty building behind those intelligent eyes. Easy, boy, Caleb said softly. The words were barely audible. Yet Thunder heard them. Emma noticed first. The stallion's attention flickered back toward her father. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. The breeze rolled across the arena carrying the scent of fresh hay and summer grass. Dust drifted through golden sunlight. Somewhere in the distance a flag snapped against its pole. Caleb took a slow breath. Then another. He understood something the others did not. Fear could spread. Calm could spread too. The question was which one people chose to offer. Madison watched him carefully. Every instinct told her to intervene. Every business lesson she had ever learned encouraged action. Solve the problem. Take charge. Move faster. Yet something inside her urged patience. For the first time that day, she listened. Caleb slowly lowered himself onto one knee. The movement surprised everyone. Trevor frowned. Several spectators exchanged puzzled looks. Emma smiled. She knew exactly why her father had done it. He was making himself smaller. Less threatening. Less demanding. More trustworthy. Thunder blinked. The tension around his eyes softened. Another long moment passed. Then another. The crowd grew quieter. People who had been talking stopped talking. People who had been moving stopped moving. The entire arena seemed to settle around Caleb's example. Madison felt it happen. Hundreds of strangers gradually choosing stillness. Choosing respect. Choosing patience. Thunder lowered his head. Then, for the first time all afternoon, he walked forward completely on his own. One step. Then another. No rope guided him. No command forced him. No reward tempted him. The stallion simply chose trust. A collective gasp swept through the arena. Madison stared in disbelief. Trevor looked speechless. Emma's eyes filled with pride. And as Thunder stopped directly in front of Caleb, gently lowering his nose toward the man's open hand, everyone finally realized they were not witnessing a man tame a horse. They were witnessing a frightened animal discover that someone understood him. No one spoke. The arena that had been filled with opinions only minutes earlier now stood wrapped in a silence so complete that even the distant flutter of banners could be heard. Caleb remained kneeling in the dust while Thunder stood calmly before him. The stallion's powerful frame no longer carried the restless tension that had frustrated trainers for months. Instead, there was a quiet steadiness between horse and man, an understanding that seemed almost impossible to explain. Caleb slowly lifted his hand and rested it gently against Thunder's neck. The horse did not pull away. He did not hesitate. He simply stood there, relaxed and trusting. A collective breath escaped the crowd. Madison felt her heart pound against her ribs. She had imagined countless scenarios for Thunder's future. Victory at competitions. Magazine covers. Breeding championships. What she had never imagined was this simple moment. Not dominance. Not control. Trust. Trevor stared at the scene as though the ground beneath him had shifted. For months he had insisted the stallion needed firmer methods, stricter discipline, more pressure. Yet everything he believed was being challenged by a rancher wearing faded jeans and dust-covered boots. This cannot be happening, he muttered under his breath. Nearby spectators exchanged glances. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others smiled quietly. Several people even lowered their phones, realizing they had stopped recording and simply started watching. Madison stepped closer to the fence surrounding the ring. Her eyes remained fixed on Caleb. How? She finally asked. The question carried none of the arrogance from earlier. Only genuine curiosity. Caleb looked up. He was never fighting people, he said. He was protecting himself. Madison absorbed the words. Suddenly. She remembered every trainer arriving with plans. Every expert arriving with solutions. Every meeting focused on fixing Thunder. Nobody had asked what had happened to him before he arrived. Nobody had slowed down long enough to understand the horse beneath the investment. Thunder lowered his head again and lightly nudged Caleb's shoulder. Emma laughed softly from the fence. The sound warmed the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Caleb smiled back at his daughter. For a brief moment, nothing else seemed to matter. Not the crowd. Not the attention. Not the astonishment surrounding them. Only a father sharing a simple victory with the child he loved most. Madison noticed that too. The way Caleb looked at Emma revealed more about him than any introduction ever could. She saw devotion. Sacrifice. Quiet strength. The kind of character that did not seek recognition because it already knew its worth. Then Thunder took another step and positioned himself beside Caleb as though he belonged there. Another ripple of amazement spread through the audience. Trevor had no explanation left. Madison had no assumptions left. And as the golden Montana sunlight settled across the arena, everyone present realized they had witnessed something far greater than a training breakthrough. They had witnessed dignity rewarded, patience respected, and a humble single father earn the admiration of an entire crowd without ever asking for it. The crowd slowly began to disperse as the exhibition came to an end, but Madison Sterling remained near the arena long after most spectators had left. The evening sky above Montana glowed with shades of amber and crimson, and the cooling air carried the scent of hay, leather, and freshly watered grass. Across the grounds, Caleb was helping Emma gather their belongings. He accepted no interviews. He posed for no photographs. He seemed perfectly content to disappear back into ordinary life. That puzzled Madison more than anything else. People spent years chasing recognition. Caleb walked away from it without a second glance. Who is he? Madison finally asked. One of her ranch managers looked up from a tablet. Caleb Dawson. Madison nodded. The manager hesitated. Honestly, not many people know much. Lives outside town. Raises his daughter alone. Keeps to himself. Madison frowned. That cannot be the whole story. Curious now, she made a few calls from her office trailer before leaving the fairgrounds. By the time darkness settled over the valley, pieces of a very different picture had begun to emerge. The first surprise came from a retired military veterinarian in Colorado. The second came from an equine rehabilitation specialist in Texas. The third came from an old industry publication buried nearly a decade in the past. Madison stared at the screen in disbelief. Caleb Dawson had once been one of the most respected horse behavior specialists in the country. He had consulted for elite programs, rehabilitated difficult horses others had given up on, and earned a reputation for remarkable results achieved without force or intimidation. His work had been studied. His methods had been praised. His future had appeared limitless. Then, almost overnight, he vanished. No scandal. No controversy. No dramatic public explanation. He simply walked away. Madison kept reading. A quiet article from years earlier finally revealed why. Shortly after losing his wife to illness, Caleb had withdrawn from public life to focus entirely on raising his young daughter. He turned down contracts. Declined speaking engagements. Sold properties. Left behind a career many people would have considered a dream. Not because he failed. Because he chose fatherhood instead. Madison slowly leaned back in her chair. The revelation settled heavily in her heart. She thought about Emma's smile. The way she looked at her father. The trust between them. Suddenly everything made sense. Caleb had not become ordinary. He had sacrificed extraordinary success for something he valued more. Outside her office window, the lights of the ranch shimmered against the darkness. Madison found herself staring into the night for a long time. Wealth had introduced her to powerful people. Fame had introduced her to ambitious people. Yet she could not remember the last time she encountered someone whose character felt this genuine. Meanwhile, miles away beneath a sky crowded with stars, Caleb and Emma drove home along a quiet country road. Thunder was behind them now. The crowd was behind them. The attention was behind them. Emma looked out the truck window and smiled. "You never told me you were famous." Caleb laughed softly. "That was a long time ago." Emma tilted her head. "Why did you quit?" Caleb glanced at his daughter and smiled. "Because some things are more important." Emma reached across the seat and squeezed his hand. And for the first time that evening, neither of them noticed that their lives were about to change forever. 3 weeks later, the first frost of autumn shimmered across the Montana countryside as Caleb repaired a section of fencing near his property line. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine trees and distant wood smoke. Emma sat nearby on a fence post, sketching horses in a worn notebook while their old golden retriever slept in the grass beside her. Life had returned to normal. At least that was what Caleb believed. The sound of an approaching vehicle drifted across the ranch road. Caleb glanced up and paused. A dark green pickup slowly rolled to a stop near the gate. Moments later, Madison Sterling stepped out. Gone were the designer jackets and corporate polish. She wore simple jeans, riding boots, and a light flannel shirt. For the first time since meeting her, she looked less like a chief executive and more like a woman searching for something real. Emma's eyes widened. "Daddy, that is the horse lady." Caleb smiled despite himself. "I noticed." Madison approached the fence with a hesitant expression that surprised both of them. Confidence had always come naturally to her. This felt different. More personal. More vulnerable. "I hope I am not interrupting," she said. Caleb rested his hammer against a post. "Depends. Are you here to buy my fence?" A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. The tension immediately softened. Emma grinned. "I like her." Madison looked at the young girl. "That was quick." Emma shrugged. You look happier than the last time I saw you. For a moment Madison simply stared. Then she laughed again. The child was right. Something had changed. Since the exhibition, she had spent countless hours reflecting on her life. The endless meetings. The relentless pursuit of success. The constant pressure to prove herself. Somewhere along the way, she had forgotten that respect could not be purchased and peace could not be scheduled. Caleb had reminded her without ever trying. I brought someone who wanted to visit, Madison said. She turned toward the truck. A moment later, a familiar black stallion stepped into view from the attached trailer. Thunder looked healthier, calmer, and more confident than ever. Emma jumped off the fence post and smiled from ear to ear. The stallion immediately recognized Caleb. His ears perked forward as he walked toward the fence. Caleb gently rubbed the horse's neck. Thunder relaxed instantly. Madison watched the scene unfold beneath the bright Montana sky. It felt strangely perfect. Not because of the horse. Not because of the ranch. Because for the first time in years she felt no need to be anyone except herself. The afternoon passed quietly. Emma showed Madison her drawings. Caleb shared coffee on the porch. Thunder grazed peacefully in a nearby pasture. Nobody rushed. Nobody performed. Nobody pretended. As sunset painted the horizon with gold and crimson light, the 3 adults and 1 little girl stood beside the pasture fence watching Thunder move across the field. Emma slipped her hand into Madison's. Caleb noticed but said nothing. The wind stirred gently through the tall grass. The mountains glowed beneath the fading light. And in that peaceful silence, Madison finally understood what Thunder had recognized from the very beginning. Real strength was quiet. Real dignity needed no audience. And sometimes the greatest gift life could offer was not success, wealth, or recognition, but a second chance to find a place that felt like home. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. And before you go, what state are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. See you in the next story.